Okay, if you didn't have a chance to look at the stories, I'll just summarize them in a couple of words. There are two incidents that uh, bespeak a very exceptional salvation. In the one incident, uh, Omi had had some sort of stroke, and one sort of amazing intervention was the fact that the doctor at the infirmary in the camp was somebody who knew them, uh, actually knew them well from Stettin. But the key part of that story was that they did inspections of the bunk, of the barracks, where she needed to be at full rest for, could be even 5 days. And anyone who was not showing up to work was certainly not going to survive the day. They checked the barracks, and for 5 straight days, they did not see that there was a person there in that bunk. That was one incident. The other incident that I chose to put together with this one was the fact that Omi and Aunt Marlet and my mother, that Savta, they were all together in a gas chamber, and she had arranged with this Sonderkommando to give her a signal as to whether it was going to be water or gas. Somehow that myth that there was sometimes water and not gas endured. I guess it kept people in the system. I'm not sure if it's just not part of the cruelty of the story, but he indicated through his glass booth that it was going to be gas. They did what they felt they needed to do to prepare to die. It seemed to have been a very strong issue for Savta to die with dignity, to not be clawing at the walls, but to give her life back with dignity, and not to give the Nazis the satisfaction of seeing them clawing as their life ebbed away. And then it was water. We don't need to go into how and why the valve for the gas did not function, but it was indeed water. And they survived. And I felt that it was important to talk about a couple of points. One is a point that is sort of obvious to everyone, but Rav Halevi, the former chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, said it very well when he said, we incorporate into our prayers and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, mi yichyeh u'mi yamus. There's a decree on Rosh Hashanah that is sealed on Yom Kippur as to who will live and who will die. And he said the obvious question: why do we need a decree to who will live? People are alive, don't need a decree for them to live. Obviously, if there's going to be a change to that status and they're going to die, that's a decree. But what decree is there? What gezerah is there that somebody should live? And he said that this gezeras hachayim refers to those who, under natural circumstances, would not survive. The lone survivor of the plane crash, the person who survives a terminal illness, the person who comes out of a gas chamber, the person who is able to tell the story after everyone else who might have been in an upper bunk would not be alive to tell the stories. So in order to make the point, Rav Halevi says that that's what we're saying. We're saying that if there's a gzeira for a person to pass away, then no matter what steps he does to try to protect himself, they will be to no avail. The Malach HaMavet, so to speak, will find him wherever he is. But the opposite is also true. That if the decree is that the person should live in spite of the fact that the natural circumstances are that point to his death, he'll live, no matter what, no matter how. And so there is an element of this Gzeras HaChaim that that we need to highlight, that we need to know about, we need to focus, that there's a Gzeras HaChaim just as there is when there is a Gzera otherwise, Chas v'Shalom. And as far as why a particular person was chosen to survive, it could be that there was merit from generations past, merit of the person themselves, but he said that that is a decree, that is a decision that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes, and the rationale and the reason for choosing the survivors is known only to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. With that decision, the person has been designated for life. Now, if we think about this idea of a designation for life, we'll realize that there are varying degrees of this designation, depending on the Derech HaTeva outcome. Meaning, if it's less likely that the person is going to die, then it's less of a Gzeras Chaim that the person should live. It's a glaring Gzeras Chaim when virtually everyone or nearly everyone who encounters that circumstance passes away. Then it's a very glaring Gzeras Chaim. But it's a Gzeras Chaim to a lesser degree as the statistics alter. But I think that it's important to recognize that there's a new factor that enters the story, and that is you have to ask, why am I supposed to be excited about the fact that I was chosen to live? Why is that significant? So everybody else did not survive. And this person was designated, selected to survive. Why is that important? And that brings us to a very fundamental part of what the Holocaust means and what our sort of post-Holocaust perspective is supposed to be. We repeat many times, starting from the Moda'ani in the morning to the bracha of Elokai Neshama, where we say Kol Zman Sha'Neshama V'Kirbi, Moda'ani Lifonecha. We, in every Shmona Esrei, refer to Hashem as Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed. We are affirming that being alive is the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is the greatest chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu grants. It is a chesed that he has granted to everyone who has ever lived, and it is a chesed that he will grant once again to everyone who has ever lived. Everyone who has ever lived, the Yesod V'Sharash Avoda points this out quite explicitly. Everyone who has ever lived, from Adam HaRishon till the end of time, will be granted again life, assuming that they didn't do something that would prevent that. But everyone will be granted life because that's what Hashem does, and that's what Hashem values. And to the extent that Hashem values and cherishes life, we are required to value and cherish life. Now, that may not seem like a big task, but when you're confronting a society that celebrates death and destruction, when you're talking about, I mean, I've even heard that there are movies that actually depict senseless death. That's what I've heard. I've been told. So the idea that we are meant to cherish life comes against a backdrop of a society that is not cherishing life, that in fact is viewing life as sort of a statistic. So and so many people were killed on the highways. It was a good year, it was a bad year relative to the number of deaths and fatalities of the previous year. And we almost create a certain tolerance for death, which erodes the sense of celebration of life. Life carries with it infinite value and meaning. Every moment of life, even of the most pathetic expression of life, is significant because it is the primary will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Everything else that exists in the world is all a sideshow to the primary show, which is that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, that he grants life. And we have distorted that with all sorts of definitions of quality of life. And well, if it's at this type of life, it's not worth it anymore. That it goes below a certain line of quality of life, and we fail to remind ourselves, Kol Zman Shahanishama Vikirbi Mode'ani, that we are meant to celebrate life. And so survival is not simply that we got by or we got through a challenging circumstance. It's something that is supposed to affect and inform our daily lives and the way in which we relate to our lives and the way that Hashem relates to our lives, so that a person cannot claim to be coming closer to Hashem if he is not celebrating life. And by the way, Oave Hashem Sinura, just mentioned as a parenthetical, that anyone who is a proponent or who tries to take away life is an enemy, who must be viewed as an enemy, who must be destroyed. We have no tolerance for anyone whose mission it is to take away somebody else's life. That is never going to be a tolerated expression of a person's humanity. Well, my humanity includes destroying other people. And we actively seek to rid the world of such people, to the extent that they can be called people. And so what the story of the Holocaust is about as regards to life itself is the importance of juxtaposing our relationship with Hashem as it is expressed in our celebration of life against those who would presume to improve the world by destroying other people's lives. And so the fact that Savta, Omi, and Marlit, the fact that they survived has to be viewed on a continuum. From the one extreme, they were chosen, designated to live. Designated to live has its own set of implications. What it means to be designated is not to understand why, but to recognize the significance. And once we recognize the significance of surviving, we then are forced to turn back to the question of, do I celebrate, do I cherish life? And if I cherish life, have I bought into some of the corrupted messages of a society that doesn't recognize the absolute and ultimate value of life? And so I felt that these two stories would be useful in gaining that perspective. Any questions or comments, you're welcome to unmute yourselves. Otherwise, I will wish you a great week.